She was the picture of perfection and America's angel. But behind the scenes, many fans didn't know the shocking truth about her story. While the world admired her grace and beauty, Jaclyn Smith was quietly navigating battles that never made the headlines. A devastating diagnosis, a string of heartbreaks, and a kind of strength that didn't look like courage. But how did she survive it all? What truths did she keep hidden, even from those closest to her? And as she nears 80, what shocking twist brought her back into the spotlight? This is the side of Jaclyn Smith you were never meant to see. Early life and road to stardom. When Jaclyn Smith was born on October 26, 1945 in Houston, Texas, there was no way of predicting that the quiet little girl from the Lone Star State would one day become one of the most recognizable faces in television history. Her father, Jack Smith, was a dentist with a steady hand and a strong sense of discipline, while her mother, Margaret Ellen Hartsfield, provided the warmth and poise that would later define Jaclyn's public image. From an early age, Jaclyn displayed a calm confidence and a quiet intensity, qualities that would help shape her career even before she fully understood what she wanted to become. Growing up in Houston, Jaclyn lived a relatively ordinary life, rooted in Southern values, a close-knit family, and a steady rhythm of school and church. But beneath that simplicity was a deep creative streak. She had a love for beauty, grace, and performance. Though she didn't come from a family of actors or entertainers, she was instinctively drawn to the stage. But it was ballet that first called her name. After graduating from high school, Jaclyn briefly attended Trinity University in San Antonio, but her heart wasn't fully in academics. She eventually moved to New York City, chasing a dream that she hadn't yet clearly defined. She fell in love with dancing and enrolled in one of the most elite ballet institutions in the country, where she trained rigorously, immersing herself in a world of precision, form, and unspoken expression. While ballet was grueling and highly competitive, it taught her the discipline she would carry with her into every other part of her career. Fate had other plans for Jaclyn, and while trying to support herself in New York, she took on modeling jobs, and it wasn't long before she started gaining attention for her elegance, her poised on-camera presence, and a quiet magnetism that made her perfect for commercials. She soon became one of the most familiar faces on American television, not as an actress yet, but as a model for some of the most iconic beauty brands of the 1970s. Her biggest modeling break came when she became the face of Breck shampoo, earning her the now famous title of a Breck girl. With her glossy brunette hair, luminous skin, and calm demeanor, Jaclyn represented the ideal of clean, classic American beauty. She also became a spokeswoman for Wella Balsam shampoo, another huge campaign that elevated her image nationally. These roles may have seemed light or commercial to some, but they gave Jaclyn screen time, brand visibility, and the ability to connect with audiences without even speaking a word. But Jaclyn Smith didn't want to be just a pretty face in a magazine or a television advertisement. She wanted to act. And so, she started taking acting classes, slowly easing her way into roles in small TV parts, mostly in commercials or guest appearances. During this time, she never allowed the modeling fame to distract her from her greater ambition. Unlike some of her peers, Jaclyn wasn't in a hurry. She was quietly determined. That patience paid off in a way no one could have anticipated. And in 1976, television history was made with the launch of a new detective drama called Charlie's Angels, produced by Aaron Spelling. The show's concept of three female private detectives working for an unseen boss was bold, fresh, and tailor-made for the era's shifting views on women's roles in society. But most fans don't realize that Jaclyn initially wasn't the first choice. The role of Kelly Garrett had been offered to actress Kate Jackson, who instead chose to play Sabrina Duncan. Jaclyn was brought in to replace the original Kelly, an actress named Shelley Hack, who dropped out during casting, and it was a last-minute decision that would change Jaclyn's life forever. From the moment Jaclyn stepped into the role, it was clear she wasn't just playing a part, she was Kelly Garrett. With her soft-spoken confidence, elegant demeanor, and a fierce intelligence just beneath the surface, she gave the character a complexity that wasn't always on the page. Her chemistry with co-stars Farrah Fawcett and Kate Jackson was electric, and by the end of the first season, Jaclyn had become a fan favorite. As Charlie's Angels soared in popularity, Jaclyn Smith's fame skyrocketed. Millions of viewers tuned in every week, not just for the action and fashion, but for Jaclyn's grounded, graceful presence. Over the course of the show's 5-season run, Jaclyn was the only original angel who stayed the entire time, even as co-stars came and went. And that loyalty and professionalism spoke volumes. Her portrayal of Kelly Garrett made her a global icon. She became a staple on magazine covers, television interviews, and red carpets. She was featured on the cover of Time magazine, a rare honor for a television actress at the time. But more than just fame, Jaclyn Smith became a brand. Long before it was common for actors to launch lifestyle lines, Jaclyn saw the potential in using her image to build something lasting. She entered the world of business with the same quiet focus that had driven her entire career. In 1985, she launched her own clothing line for Kmart, which became one of the most successful celebrity-endorsed brands in American retail history. While some laughed at the idea of a major actress collaborating with a discount department store, Jaclyn turned the partnership into a multi-million-dollar empire, proving that elegance didn't have to come with a high price tag. She would later expand into home decor, bedding, and skincare, all under her name. But for all her success, her story wasn't without personal complexity. As she stood at the height of her career, her private life was more complicated than the polished image suggested. While the world saw a confident, graceful star, behind the scenes, Jaclyn was navigating the pressures of fame, the weight of expectations, and the pain of personal heartbreaks that didn't make it into the magazines. And perhaps the most complicated part of her story was her turbulent love life. Jaclyn's turbulent love life. For someone whose public persona was so often defined by elegance, grace, and calm, Jaclyn Smith's personal life, especially when it came to love, was marked by complexity, heartbreak, and a long search for stability. Her first serious step into marriage came during the early years of her acting career. In 1968, at the age of 23, Jaclyn married actor Roger Davis. At the time, Davis was a rising star in television himself. On paper, they looked like the perfect Hollywood couple who were both attractive, successful, and deeply embedded in the entertainment world. But behind the scenes, the relationship wasn't built on the kind of foundation that could weather fame, evolving ambitions, and the natural pressures that come with two careers on the rise. The marriage lasted 7 years, and by 1975, it ended in divorce. Jaclyn has never spoken bitterly about Roger Davis, but it was clear that the relationship had run its course long before the papers were filed. In an interview, she said, "I was such an innocent. I was too much living for him, and I lost sight of myself." The dissolution of that marriage marked the end of one chapter and the quiet beginning of another, and the timing was significant. Just 1 year before, Charlie's Angels would launch her to global stardom. In 1978, Jaclyn took another chance on love, this time with Dennis Cole, a fellow actor who had guest-starred on Charlie's Angels and was known for his roles in Felony Squad and Bracken's World. The marriage brought with it a sense of symmetry. They were two television actors, both navigating the ups and downs of the business and finding love within the same orbit. But even more notably, Dennis came into the marriage with a young son, named Joe Cole, from a previous relationship. Dennis and Jaclyn were often seen at public events together, smiling and supportive of each other's work. For a time, they gave the appearance of domestic contentment, but internally, the relationship was strained. Fame may have connected them, but it also placed pressure on every decision in their marriage. Between the demands of filming, public appearances, and navigating personal dynamics, the bond between them began to erode. And after just 2.5 years, they divorced in 1981. Speaking about the reasons for the divorce, Jaclyn said, "All the publicity contributed to the breakup. I guess a man doesn't want competition. And I understand that. I understood Dennis wanted to be the head of the house, and the papers were calling him Mr. Jaclyn Smith. Years later, tragedy would strike in the most heartbreaking way. In 1991, Jaclyn's former stepson, Joe Cole, who had become a writer and close friend of punk rock icon Henry Rollins, tragically lost his life during a home invasion robbery in Los Angeles. Joe was just 30 years old. Though Jaclyn and Dennis had long been divorced by that time, she was absolutely devastated by the news. She had helped raise Joe during the marriage, and his death was a cruel reminder of how quickly life could turn. Her third marriage to British cinematographer Tony Richmond offered a change in direction. Richmond wasn't just behind the camera professionally. He had worked on acclaimed films like The Man Who Fell to Earth and Legends of the Fall. But he also brought a new creative energy into Jaclyn's life. They married in 1981, the same year her second marriage ended. It was a whirlwind shift, but for a while, it seemed like Jaclyn had finally found something solid. She once joked, saying, "If this marriage doesn't work, I'm going into a nunnery." Together, they had 2 children, and for Jaclyn, becoming a mother was one of the most grounding experiences of her life. She spoke often in interviews about how motherhood gave her perspective beyond fame, scripts, or fashion campaigns. Her children became her anchor. Even as she continued to build her career and launch her wildly successful Kmart clothing line, Jaclyn always made it clear that family came first. But even the joy of motherhood couldn't save the marriage. Over time, she and Tony Richmond began to drift apart. They officially divorced in 1989, after 8 years of marriage. Unlike some of her previous breakups, this one was handled with quiet dignity. There were no messy headlines, no public blame games, just the graceful acknowledgement that it was time to part ways. After 3 marriages and 3 divorces, Jaclyn Smith still believed in love. And then, in 1997, something unexpected happened when she met a man who had nothing to do with the entertainment industry. He wasn't a fellow actor, director, or producer like her previous marriages. He was a cardiothoracic surgeon named Brad Allen. Their worlds could not have been more different, and yet the connection was instant. Allen had previously operated on Jaclyn's father, and their paths crossed again by coincidence or fate soon afterward. Unlike the whirlwind marriages of her past, Jaclyn took her time with Brad. They built their relationship slowly, carefully, and away from the spotlight. After years of high-profile relationships and public scrutiny, this new chapter felt refreshingly normal. They tied the knot in 1997, and since then, Jaclyn and Brad have built a life together that has now spanned over 27 years. Their relationship is marked by mutual respect, shared values, and an unshakable sense of privacy. In every interview where she's asked about her marriage, Jaclyn speaks with a calm certainty. She calls Brad her best friend, her partner, and the love of her life. For a woman who had been in the public eye for most of her life, Jaclyn Smith's love story finally settled into something private, deeply personal, and enduring. And perhaps that's what makes it so meaningful. But love and fame weren't the only battles Jaclyn would face. Just as she found stability in her personal life, a new and unexpected fight that would test her strength, her spirit, and her will to live came her way. The diagnosis that changed everything. By the early 2000s, Jaclyn Smith had already lived several lifetimes in the public eye. She had conquered television, redefined celebrity branding with her fashion empire, and finally found the kind of quiet, enduring love that had eluded her for decades. But in 2002, her world came to a halt. It began with a routine medical checkup. Like many women, Jaclyn was diligent about her health. She knew the importance of early detection, but she never imagined that she would become one of the millions of women forced to face the chilling diagnosis of breast cancer. Jaclyn was diagnosed in 2002. There had been no symptoms or warnings, and it had been caught early. But that didn't make the news any easier to digest. Jaclyn later shared in interviews that she was stunned, even though the cancer was detected in its early stages. She had no family history of the disease, lived a healthy lifestyle, and had always kept a close eye on her well-being. But cancer doesn't always follow rules or patterns. It doesn't always give warnings. And in that moment, she went from being a global icon to a patient. Jaclyn underwent a lumpectomy, a surgical procedure that removes the tumor and surrounding tissue, and followed it with radiation treatments. It was a physically and emotionally draining process. And yet, in typical Jaclyn Smith fashion, she refused to step back from her responsibilities. While many would have pressed pause, Jaclyn kept moving forward. At the time, she was working on the television series The District, and even as she underwent treatment, she continued filming. She didn't want to be defined by her diagnosis or to appear fragile or in retreat. That same year, she also launched a furniture line, expanding her growing brand beyond fashion into home interiors. While her body was battling the effects of radiation, her mind remained focused on creating, building, and showing up for the things she believed in. In the years that followed her recovery, Jaclyn became a vocal and passionate advocate for early detection and women's health. She joined forces with organizations promoting breast cancer awareness and was particularly involved with a campaign called Strength in Knowing. This initiative aimed to empower women with knowledge about genetic risk factors and the importance of regular screenings. Jaclyn's voice in this space mattered deeply, not just because of her fame, but because of her quiet, relatable honesty. She spoke about the importance of listening to your body, trusting your instincts, and catching problems early. She encouraged women to prioritize their health, to stop putting off mammograms, and to talk openly about what too many still feared in silence. Her advocacy work wasn't performative, it was deeply personal, and her connection to the disease didn't end with her own diagnosis. In fact, two of her closest former co-stars, from Charlie's Angels, Farrah Fawcett and Kate Jackson, would also face their own harrowing battles with cancer. Kate Jackson had already been through breast cancer years earlier, in 1987, long before Jaclyn's own diagnosis. And so, when Jaclyn was facing her treatment, Kate became a quiet source of strength. The two had remained close friends after their time on Charlie's Angels, and that bond only deepened through shared experience. Jaclyn has often credited Kate with helping her stay grounded during treatment, offering reassurance that she could come out the other side stronger. Then came the devastating news about Farrah Fawcett, whose anal cancer diagnosis in 2006 quickly turned into a global media frenzy. Unlike Jaclyn's quiet recovery, Farrah's battle was painfully public. Tabloids chronicled her every move, every hospital visit, and every downturn in her health. It was invasive and brutal. However, Jaclyn stood by Farrah through all of it. She often visited Farrah in private, shielding her from the press and helping her maintain some dignity during her most vulnerable moments. When Farrah passed away in 2009, Jaclyn was one of the few friends who spoke publicly and gently about the loss. She described Farrah as courageous and radiant, even in her final days. To face your own cancer battle is one thing. To watch the people you love go through, it is another. And Jaclyn had to do both. But through it all, she never used her platform for pity or dramatics. Instead, she used her story to help others. In interviews, she explained how her experience reshaped her priorities, made her more compassionate, and reminded her how precious time really is. She talked about the importance of gratitude, even on difficult days, and about how cancer taught her that vulnerability doesn't mean weakness. In many ways, her cancer journey added a whole new layer to her public image. She was no longer just Kelly Garrett, the timeless beauty from Charlie's Angels, or the entrepreneur who turned retail into gold. She became a survivor, and more importantly, someone who helped other women become survivors too. But strength doesn't always come in graceful packages. Even Jaclyn Smith, beloved by millions, had to weather moments that threatened her calm. She's faced controversies and painful headlines that didn't always make the front page. Controversies and public scrutiny. For a woman who spent more than 5 decades in the public eye, Jaclyn Smith managed to avoid the kind of headline-grabbing scandals that often follow long-term fame. Her name rarely appeared in the tabloids for the wrong reasons. She wasn't known for outbursts, arrests, or dramatic feuds, but that doesn't mean her career was completely free from tension, rumors, or media pressure. One of the earliest instances of personal strain making its way into public conversation came during her second marriage to actor Dennis Cole. While Jaclyn maintained a reputation for privacy and professionalism, Dennis carried a different kind of image. He was seen as a charismatic Hollywood playboy, known not just for his good looks, but for his larger-than-life personality and flirtatious behavior. Though they appeared to be a glamorous pair on the red carpet, insiders at the time noted that the tension between Cole's public persona and Jaclyn's quieter disposition may have created friction behind closed doors. There were whispered reports that his need for attention and flirtatious nature strained the marriage early on. While Jaclyn never publicly criticized her former husband, and Dennis himself remained largely respectful about their time together, the differences in temperament became increasingly clear. But she faced a far more personal violation when the media leaked her breast cancer diagnosis in 2002. Jaclyn had not yet gone public with the news when the story broke. The press, hungry for a scoop, ran headlines detailing her health before she even had a chance to control the narrative herself. It was an invasion she didn't expect, especially considering the deeply private nature of the diagnosis. For someone who had always guarded her personal life, this moment marked one of the few times she felt truly exposed. Still, rather than lashing out or retreating from the spotlight entirely, Jaclyn decided to take control of the conversation on her own terms. In later interviews, she addressed the diagnosis openly and compassionately, turning the invasion of her privacy into an opportunity to advocate for other women going through the same battle. But perhaps the most persistent and often misunderstood controversy of Jaclyn's career involves the behind-the-scenes tension during Season 4 of Charlie's Angels. After the departure of Kate Jackson, a new angel, Shelley Hack, was brought in to join the series. She was a former model best known for her work with Charlie Perfume. While Shelley had the look producers wanted, her arrival didn't go as smoothly as hoped. Reports from that time suggest that the dynamic on set began to shift, and not necessarily for the better. There were widespread rumors of a feud between Jaclyn Smith and Shelley Hack, with some gossip columns suggesting that Jaclyn, along with co-star Cheryl Ladd, wasn't pleased with the casting change. What intensified the speculation was that both Jaclyn and Cheryl were allegedly considering leaving the series around that time, dissatisfied with the show's creative direction and struggling with the chemistry among the new lineup. But in the end, it wasn't Jaclyn or Cheryl who left. It was Shelley Hack after just one season. No one from the original cast ever confirmed the feud publicly. Jaclyn, true to form, never engaged in the gossip. But behind the camera, sources claim there was a clear divide, and Shelley's early departure only fueled the belief that tensions were real, even if no one was willing to say so out loud. Still, these controversies never defined Jaclyn Smith. They flickered in the background, occasionally surfacing in entertainment columns or whispered in TV industry circles, but they never overshadowed her work, her dignity, or her character. If anything, they revealed something deeper about her personality, and it's her ability to maintain poise even when surrounded by chaos. So how did Jaclyn Smith transition from 70s TV royalty to a graceful icon of reinvention without ever really walking away? Reinvention and retirement? For most stars of the 1970s, fame flickered and faded. Roles dried up, the spotlight shifted, and names that once dominated TV guide covers quietly slipped into the past. But Jaclyn Smith never followed that script. As she nears 80, she hasn't just remained present. She's done something far more rare. She's reinvented herself again and again, evolving with grace, staying relevant without ever chasing relevance. and redefining what aging in the spotlight can actually look like. In 2025, Jaclyn made headlines again, not for a red carpet appearance or a new product launch, but for something far more urgent. Her beloved Beverly Hills mansion, worth millions of dollars and a home she had lived in for decades, was unfortunately threatened by the Southern California wildfires that scorched the region. Like many longtime Los Angeles residents, Jaclyn faced the terrifying reality of encroaching flames and hazardous air. According to reports, she and her husband, Brad Allen, evacuated the property and relocated temporarily to the quieter, greener town of Montecito, a coastal enclave known for celebrity residents like Oprah Winfrey and Prince Harry. Though she didn't speak publicly about the move, insiders said it was an emotional shift. The Beverly Hills estate wasn't just a house, it was where she had made memories, hosted friends, and where much of her business empire had taken shape. But as always, Jaclyn met the challenge with calm pragmatism. She adjusted, protected her family, and quietly carried on. What stunned fans even more was how she looked when she reappeared in public not long after the evacuation. In early 2025, at age 79, Jaclyn hosted a private dinner party in Los Angeles, surrounded by friends, family, and a few industry insiders. Photos from the evening quickly circulated on social media, not because of the guest list, but because of Jaclyn herself, wearing a crisp, tailored white power suit, with her hair styled in soft waves and her signature glow intact. She looked nearly unchanged from her Charlie's Angels days. Fans have consistently praised her ageless glow, but for Jaclyn, her appearance has never been about vanity. She's often said in interviews that taking care of herself is part of how she stays mentally strong. She credits much of that to her continued work in fashion and beauty, an industry she never walked away from. Long after Charlie's Angels ended, Jaclyn continued building her retail empire. Her affordable clothing lines weren't just successful. They reshaped the way celebrity fashion was marketed. In recent years, she's expanded into skincare, partnering with her husband, Brad, a medical expert, to develop a science-backed line focused on health and radiance. It's a blend of personal passion and professional integrity, combining her lifelong dedication to beauty with her husband's clinical knowledge. That fusion of business and family came full circle in another unforgettable moment that made headlines in 2023. At her son, Gaston Richmond's wedding, Jaclyn was seen reuniting with Kate Jackson, her former Charlie's Angels co-star and lifelong friend. The two hadn't been photographed together in years, and fans couldn't contain their excitement. The moment felt like a time capsule with two women who defined a generation of television, now older, wiser, but still bonded by something deeper than fame. The photos went viral. Social media lit up with nostalgia. It wasn't just about seeing Kelly Garrett and Sabrina Duncan side by side again. It was about what they represented: enduring friendship, aging with grace, and staying true to oneself long after the cameras stopped rolling. Around the same time, rumors began to swirl that Jaclyn might be retiring from acting altogether. She hadn't taken on a film or TV role in several years, and some entertainment outlets speculated that she would officially step away from Hollywood at age 78. But Jaclyn never made a formal announcement, and if anything, she's more active than ever, just not on screen. She now focuses her energy on her businesses, her family, and her philanthropic efforts. To some, it may seem like Jaclyn Smith has retired from Hollywood, but in truth, she's simply chosen a new stage. One where she sets the script. One where legacy isn't measured by screen time, but by impact. And if you ask her fans who grew up watching her as Kelly Garrett, Jaclyn Smith never really left. She just evolved. Would you love to see Jaclyn Smith make a comeback on television? Tell us in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.